Delighted to say, joining me, I always say this on a Thursday, Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. I hear we're talking about knitting patterns in number 10 Downing Street.
Yeah, knitting pattern. Yeah, I mean, genuinely, this is again, this is always what I love. All our regular, friends in the studio, but you're always so helpful and useful when we're talking about what goes on behind the scenes. I want to start with, because I think this clip is just extraordinary. Yesterday, this was the moment, we had it live here on Talk yesterday during PMQs. We always take the exchanges between the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition live, where he was asked a very straightforward, specific question from Kemi Badenoch, and he gave an unusually straightforward and specific answer. And just hear the reaction from everyone else when he did.
Can the Prime Minister tell us, did the official security vetting he received mention Mandelson's ongoing relationship with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein?
So clear. Prime Minister.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, hear that noise. That was a bit of a aha moment, wasn't it? Because he's always said, if I'd known then what I know now, back in December 24, when I appointed Mandelson, I would never have appointed him. He lied to me. It's all awful. I'm the victim here, sort of nonsense, But he absolutely, we know, knew enough in December 2024, when Mandelson was appointed as our man in Washington, not to have appointed him.
The vetting process for that post is enormous. If a normal diplomat, civil servant was being put into it, they have to pass enhanced developed vetting, which literally goes into every minute detail.
When you say minute, are we talking they look through your bank statements?
Oh, they look through your bank statements, they talk to your friends, they talk to your friends' friends, they talk to your family, they look through your family's bank statements, they look through any associates you've got, they look through your social media, they will look through anything and everything that is in the public domain. They'll also look through things that are not in the public domain and work their way through your MI5 reports, your tax records and everything else. They're looking for anything that could put you in a position that could compromise you.
So that you could be blackmailed, or that you could be working nefariously.
They then interview you and compare what you say with what they know to be true, and they'll have clearly briefed the Prime Minister that what's going on.
And Peter Mandelson would have sat in a room with people asking him those questions as part of that vetting.
He should have. He should have
this done. We know from Yvette Cooper that the full vetting was not carried out before he was appointed.
Yeah. And this is where we've got two-tier activity yet again, because a civil servant would not have been allowed to take up the post until they passed that. And there's another level of vetting. That's an extremely high level of vetting, but there's another even higher level of vetting. They have to get through several of those. There's US vetting for TK clearance, which is a special intelligence compartment, and there's other compartments that I can't mention that he'd have had to get cleared through. And all of that should have happened before he was appointed. It clearly didn't. And the Cabinet Office controls the vetting process, and this is where Morgan McSweeney in the Cabinet Office as the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff and coordinating all the activity in there is central to bypassing the process and telling Keir Starmer that this risk is worth taking.
Well, exactly. But this is the extraordinary thing. We know that Mandelson was the sort of the mentor of Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's, Chief of Staff. Now, it wasn't then, but the man who was, everyone said, this is the man who's orchestrated this fantastic election victory.
I'll be all right, Gov.
I'll tell you who orchestrated that election victory. That was Nigel Farage and Rishi Sunak by basically Tories being so hopeless and Reform opposing a challenge. Yeah. It was very little. I mean, the Monster Raving Looting Party could have won that election if they'd stood enough candidates, for goodness sake, as the alternative. But this is the thing. It doesn't appear that enough was done. And it does appear, again, this is a Prime Minister. He's bleated on about, the grown-ups back in the room, about morality and integrity, and obsessed, I'm a man, I do the process, loves law, but also he's gone on and on about wanting to tackle violence against women and girls. Had to be dragged kicking and screaming to a public inquiry about the grooming gangs, called everyone who was calling for that jumping on the far right bandwagon. And he's now there he is saying he's absolutely fine with somebody, because he's a great, arch, manipulator and arch tactician, apparently. Again, I don't think that Mandelson is as clever as everyone thinks he is, because he keeps getting caught and clever people don't get caught 3 times, is that it was worth the fact that he hired an apologist for a paedophile, a convicted paedophile, the friend and apologist of a convicted paedophile, even though he knew that. And even though he claims he cares about violence against women and girls, I'm pretty sure that some of the worst violence against women and girls is rich, powerful men grooming them, hurting. These girls weren't living the life of luxury. You've got to read some of the testimony, how they were threatened when they tried to leave. They thought they feared for their lives. Some of them changed their identities. They were terrified of this man, and they were basically put out for being gang raped by other rich, powerful men. I'm sorry, he's a liar. I mean, there's not just one liar, not just Mandelson, it's Keir Starmer, because if you care about these things, you don't appoint an apologist for a paedophile.
Well, he broke the very basic process that was in there, so he doesn't care about process. And the other thing is, the Epstein files were put together by US law enforcement long before Keir Starmer came into power. Therefore, any details as Mandelson was being appointed to the ambassador, US law enforcement, our agencies in the United States liaising would have said, is there anything on your files that we need to be aware of? And they would have made them aware of what's going on. So all of this where it's come out now that he has allegedly leaked.
I think they knew everything.
They knew everything. And Starmer will have known everything.
And if they didn't know everything, it's because they literally went, no, don't tell me, fingers in the ears, don't tell me. Well, I'm sorry, that's not sodding good enough. And bearing in mind, I argued at the time, when we had a bit of a row with Adam Bolton. If you haven't seen that, go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, you'll enjoy it. But he's been a massive defender of Peter Mandelson. Yes, he's done wrong, blah, 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 but, with hindsight. No, we don't need hindsight. At the time, I said his business links with China alone made him too big a security risk.
The last time that we had a special advisor working in the Cabinet Office, filtering the information that's coming in that goes to the Prime Minister, and this is in defence of Keir Starmer, that goes to the Prime Minister for him to make a decision, was Alistair Campbell and Tony Blair and the dodgy dossier. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, look, I think it was extraordinary yesterday that it was the Labour backbenchers who basically weren't going to allow the Prime Minister and do not clearly trust the Prime Minister. They openly said so. They don't trust the Downing Street office, the Cabinet Secretary, the Chief of Staff, or anybody to put all of the information into the public domain about who knew what when before this appointment, what was said to the Prime Minister, etc., by him and by Mandelson. Because Mandelson going, I was lied to the countryside. That's not going to wash people. People were very unimpressed with that. And the fact that his own backbenchers, including, by the way, one Angela Rayner, former Deputy Prime Minister of this parish, stuck the knife in, to the front, not the back, basically saying, this should be decided. The documents, what's going to be decided, what is and what is not going to be damaging to national security and can't go in the public domain, should be decided by the Intelligence and Security Committee. Now, this is a crossbench committee of very trusted MPs who've got full security clearance to look at this stuff and can be trusted on this. But the fact that backbench Labour MPs, who are very tribal, would trust some Tory MPs, former cabinet ministers sit on that committee, they would trust them more than they would trust their own Prime Minister. I think that's very, very telling. How much damage is do you think he survives? Prime Minister's going to be speaking at 11. Oh, by the way, Nigel Farage is already speaking. He's in Wales. We expect he's going to announce the new Welsh leader of reform, and we'll bring you that when we get it. But lots of speeches today. Kemi Badenoch speaking as well today. But everyone's very busy on a Thursday morning. But do you think that the Prime Minister can survive this, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week,
the Prime Minister's lost the confidence of the country. The Prime Minister has now lost the confidence of his backbenchers. The Prime Minister has lost the confidence of many of his front benches, because they will be denying any knowledge of this beforehand.
They're having to go out on the media round and say this nonsense.
And therefore, I do not see how the Prime Minister can survive this. And actually, if he doesn't make a decision to go quickly, he's making the damage last longer.
But they always do that.
Oh, yeah,
they always do that. There's no question at all. Andrew, also, interestingly, in the news, apparently there's been a strike among the Sandringham servants. Staff told they can reject working for the former prince as he's moved on to the Norfolk estate. You have a theory about this story, because it's on at least one of the front pages. Where's this story come from, do you reckon?
Look, squirrel.
Oh, that scared the life out of me.
And that's what it is. It's it is almost certainly a campaign designed to try and distract from what's going on with the Prime Minister. Who can we get?
Let's talk about Andrew instead.
Let's put Prince Andrew or the former Prince Andrew out there and start putting it out over the headlines. People will talk about it because it's him.
It's not going to work.
And it's all
what's interesting also, what has emerged in the Epstein files, but Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein apparently asked exotic dancers for a threesome.
So what?
I mean, yeah.
So what?
Well, exactly. You know,
Yeah, all the sleaze is in there.
They can do it, yeah. But also, what's interesting, and not that we didn't already know this, but the infamous picture of Andrew with his arm around Virginia Giuffre when she was 17, along with Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell in a document where she's suggesting a first draft of an affidavit she was going to write, basically to defend Andrew after these accusations that he had sex with her, and she said she was trafficked by Andrew to have sex with Andrew on Epstein, to have sex with Andrew on 3 occasions. The basic, you know, she's completely and utterly verifying that this is a completely legitimate photograph. Now, Andrew's team spent years, I think to this day, they've still said they think it's a fake photograph. It ain't. It's true. Yeah. It's real. Which makes you think even more. Or does he just randomly have photos in his mates' flats with 17-year-old girls who then later go on to accuse him of having sex with them?
He's just a delusional individual, and he's a useful scapegoat to try and get some headlines that aren't criticising Keir Starmer, the current government, and calling for them to
I'm always amazed when you see these polls. I mean, Keir Starmer's the most unpopular Prime Minister ever, according to the polls. And when they did the polls of the Royals and who's got a positive and negative view, there are still something like 5% of the population who have a positive view of Andrew. I mean, how? I mean, what would give you a negative view of him?
Well, no, but the positive, you know, it's Keir Starmer, it's Morgan Sweeney, it's all the comms teams and all the rest of it, because their positive view is he gives us an excuse to try and distract from what's going on elsewhere. So, you know, that's all it's about.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's also talk about something else. We have to be very careful here. I'm going to explain this. This is going to be really painful for everyone. Palestine Action. Activists from Palestine Action had faced various charges in court, and there's been ongoing court cases. There are other ongoing court cases as well. They yesterday, either there were no verdict recorded, no verdict agreed, or were cleared of charges in relation to the storming of an Israeli-linked weapons factory here in the UK by activists. I mean, the stuff that's all clear in the public domain already, wearing red jumpsuits. I think they had red paint with them, and carrying sledgehammers. Now, we'll all have seen a lot of the videos of this. We'll all have seen a lot of information about this. They were found not guilty of what was, aggravated burglary, because they were charged with criminal damage, violent disorder. The jury reached partial or no verdicts on those counts, so there could be a retrial, but they were cleared of aggravated burglary. Now, we'll all have seen a lot of videos on this. There was 36 hours of deliberation. We're going to be talking to a lawyer about this later. You can't message in on this. We can't put calls on air about this, I'm afraid. You'll understand why, because if they do go for a retrial, which is very likely when there has been a no verdict reached with such serious charges, that we don't want to prejudice any future trial. We would be in contempt of court if we did so, even though that decision has not yet been made, which I think a lot of people, including me, find very frustrating. But we obviously have to, abide by the law and do so. But I think there are an awful lot of people who are, let's say, confused about why lots of politicians, Jeremy Corbyn, John McDonnell and Jack Palahniuk, very relevant politician, leader of the Green Party, have celebrated this victory, they've called it, and a victory for civil liberties, as a lot of them are calling it, in terms of those who have been found not guilty on this particular charge. A lot of people are querying how juries, when they see the evidence before them, come to certain conclusions. Your thoughts on this within boundaries. You can understand how difficult this is legally to talk about, because we cannot comment on the individual case, but because we don't want to prejudice any possible future trial.
On the surface of it, it is very difficult to see, and we haven't been through the trial, so we don't know what was presented to the jury. It's very difficult to see how the jury came up with that conclusion, and there was the not guilty verdicts against the individuals that had been accused. But at the same time, our judicial system came up with a guilty verdict for Lucy Connolly, she pleaded guilty, but there weren't people turning around saying, don't plead guilty because we'll put you through a jury trial and we can get you off in a similar way. And she serves time in prison for sending a tweet. And what we have seen superficially from what's been in the press rather than knowing what has been presented in court, there seems to be something that has got different question marks around it. This is where I think to bring a fairness in, to try and stop the debate, to try and ensure that there isn't prejudice what's going on, the court transcript should be published.
But again, we see whether there's a retrial. Indeed, we're going to be talking about this with a leading barrister later in the show, and talk about the implications of that. But also, you mentioned Lucy Connolly. Fascinating. That racial hatred charge that was brought against her for that tweet. And again, most of the reporting did not have all the full wording of the tweet. Again, I've apologised to her personally because I feel, I believed a lot of the reporting because I wasn't following every single individual case for goodness sake. Because I've got a job, but basically it was fast-tracked. It was given the OK to be fast-tracked with pushing for a prison sentence by who? The Attorney General, Lord Peter Mandelson. What I don't understand is we are constantly told by the government there's nothing we can do. We can't stop, for instance, pro-Palestinian marches. The police get to do what they want to do, whether they can't stop. It's not up to them whether, Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from Israel can turn up to Birmingham to watch a match against Aston Villa. This is all up to the police. Oh, but we're going to tell the police, and the CPS to arrest and fast track and bring charges and push for prison sentence. Sorry, are these independent bodies or aren't they? We need to know. I'd love to hear thoughts on Lucy Connolly, that's for sure. Can't take calls, I'm afraid, on the Palestine Action case. We'll talk a bit detail more about why that is later in the show. Love to hear your thoughts, though, on the Prime Minister. Can he survive this after he admitted, I think to everyone's surprise yesterday, what we already knew was true, that he already knew that Mandelson, the man he appointed in December 2024 to be our man in Washington, to be the most senior diplomat representing this country with our closest ally, that he knew that he was had stayed friends, stayed mates, big pals with Jeffrey Epstein long after he was a convicted paedophile. I'd love to